Before I get started, there's well, Paul was talking about his Batman role. I have to share. Elizabeth Letty, who used to be in the community, and I had a game that we used to play at conferences because we're assholes. That we call conference spinning, and there's this natural tendency to kind of just turn to kind of keep your conversation open, and so we'd find ourselves, we'd start turning into people so that you're going face to face, and they turn away a little bit more. And our game was to see if we could turn somebody a full 360 degrees. And so you'd see from across the room, one of us just like put their hands up, like, yes, and lost. So I apologize if I've done that to you. I'm an asshole. But yeah, so I'm here to give the annual State of Plone talk. First of all, I want to welcome you all to Barcelona. It's really great to be here. Barcelona has been the site of so many awesome things to happen to Plone in recent years. Plone 5's default theme is called Barceloneta, named after a neighborhood here. Much of mock-up happened here. Mr. Roboto, or semi-friendly testing robot, was born here. Pyrenees project in Guillotina were born here two years ago now. Wow, yeah. And a lot of Plone.org, the new Plone.org happened here as well. People want me to come and talk about Plone 5.1 for some reason. So I just want to make a quick run through of what we're adding in Plone 5.1. It's coming soon, it's released. RC1 is out now. We're adding a direct link from the group name and sharing tabs to take you to that group's member list. It's just a small change, but it'll make things a lot handier. We're adding collective indexing into Plone Core, and that basically adds folks for indexing, re-indexing, de-indexing to make cataloging on large sites run a lot faster. There's a lot of changes to the configuration registry as well. We're allowing you to split the registry XML into multiple files. We're adding delete, add, export, import options in the control panel. And also the ability to conditionally import registry records, which comes in handy if you're adding something that targets a specific Plone version. And we're also making changes to the resource registries. There's basically splitting apart the core JavaScript and CSS and the add-on JavaScript and CSS. And that'll rebuild every time you add a new add-on or remove one. And we're also integrating a new portal actions control panel, so that's one less reason to go in with the zone management interface, which is always good. We're supporting retina image scales and adding enhancements to icons and thumbnails. Auto-rotating images based on their EXIF data. And we're doing some cleanup as well, removing Portal Quick Installer, removing Plone App OpenID, and replacing Elementary with LXML for transforms. People keep asking when it's coming out. I'll say soon. Like I said, we're in release candidate 1 now. It's nearly ready. Jens pointed out to me yesterday that we're missing the undo form in Zope, which definitely needs to be fixed because that is a super useful feature. So today I really wanted to talk about stories, and I was hesitant to do this because storytelling tends to be the thing that, like, once you are in the community for so long and you start to feel old, you get up on stage and you just say, well, back in the day, blah, blah, blah. And so I don't really want to tell stories today, but I want to talk about stories. And the reason for that is this thing called generational relay. This is, it basically boils down to the idea that people leave projects and other people come in, and assuming you're doing it right. If you're not doing it right, then the project just disappears. And this is something we face in Plone itself. Right now, we are really the second generation of Plone contributors. There is a large number we've had. I wanted to talk about this today to talk about all the people that left. A bunch of them showed up today, so that's so I don't know how to deal with that. So we'll see how that goes. If you think of the life cycle of a long-term contributor in a project like Plone, It'll look something like a bell curve. They come in and sort of sniff at the code base areas, and maybe make a few bug fixes here and there, and eventually they get hooked, where there's a good reason for them to, their work, finds out, hey, you're a core contributor, you can make these fixes for us, and they start to really become more involved. And over time, they'll get to the point where they become a framework team member, then they'll taper off and maybe run a conference or join the board, and then eventually disappear. Sorry, that was. Over time, typically people become highly involved, and they'll become less involved as things like economic pressures, personal lives, job changes will affect their ability to contribute. And the same thing happens with generations. So like a group of contributors coming in will tend to look very much the same. And we've seen this in Plone, where there's an ebb and flow of major contributors to the project. So the research around it is really interesting. I kind of started delving into it when I realized that was what was happening with us about 5 years ago, when we had a number of core contributors leave, Hano, Andy, leaving, and I really became interested in it, like realizing that this is what's going on, why is it happening, and how can we deal with it. So the research around it talks about this idea of half-life, the point at which about half the developers active during the period are no longer contributing. They talk about the Debian project, for example, which has a developer half-life of around 7 years. 7.5 years. And it's interesting, that's pretty similar to the human body, which they say replaces itself every 7 years. And really, the project is basically replacing its own constituent parts, and it's a natural process. And that turnover is necessary because stasis, especially in a software project, is bad. The project becomes stagnant and it loses its ability to innovate and move forward. And so this process of continuous renewal brings in new ideas, new perspectives, and new skill sets, which really helps the project continue into the future. And normally this turnover is happening continually as one generation is diminishing, another one's coming in. The pitfall is really dropping the baton between the two. The smaller the overlap between those two generations, the better chance there is of losing knowledge that exists within the project. No single person knows everything there is to know about a particular project. So it's really important that you build in that redundancy across people, contributors to the project. And that's things like the history of the code, the history of the organization itself, and the culture of the organization. And you'll see things like, and that gap between generations can result in things like orphan code and orphaned initiatives. And it's really difficult to recover that lost knowledge, since it's typically only partially recorded and scattered across places like comments, tickets, and mailing lists. And once that project, if that knowledge really isn't shared, it completely disappears from the project. And there's different ways you can share that knowledge. One way, typically that's done through documentation, both of the code and of the different organizational processes that the project uses. And there's also stories. Jonah Bacon, who wrote a book about working with open source communities called the Auto Community, says if we slice the team open, we can see a number of generations, like rings in a tree trunk. Each generation is a source of stories and also a source of mentorship. Each generation passes down stories, experiences, and life lessons to the new generation. And that sharing is really vital to the project's continued existence. Plone's longevity is really tied into this idea of storytelling. Martin Steele wrote a master's thesis called Plone, a model of a mature open source project, and it's pretty old by now, but it's really interesting to look back through it and see some quotes from people in the early years, Alex Levy, Joel Burton, Alan Runyon, and it really gives a great idea of what makes Plone work as a project, and a lot of them are really still applicable today, which is what I find so fascinating about it. Levy says another thing that separates the Plone community from a lot of other communities is the amount of face-to-face communication that we have. We can be best friends in real life, and we can still argue agitatedly about a particular part of implementation detail without offending anyone. Or as he once told me, we want to meet you and make sure you're mostly sane, which is why we have this. Paul Everett said, the Plone community is a tangible, warm, friendly, and inviting thing to me. It's the lens through which I see Plone. In fact, it is Plone. The software comes and goes, changes, ebbs, etc. It's the people that make Plone what it is. So our generation really came into Plone. I view us as the second generation of Plone. And our generation really came in hearing stories about the Castle Sprint and the Archipelago Sprint, where they had to carry this, they had a local subversion server that wasn't connected to the internet, and they had to carry it over the hill each night to sync it up with the mainland, so that they had the most recent code. Our generation has we've had our own Castle Sprint now, which I'm so happy about. So we've been able to have sprints, Castle in Austria. This year we went to Finland. We've been in Cape Town, South Africa, and Japan, and maybe most exotic of all, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. We have our own stories, the shiny disco pants, and badass battle bots. And the fact that there's now a reminder that no, you cannot bring a katana onto the plane that's got that airport. It's the Plone Ranger, starring a current Plone board member as a backup singer. And it's the RV that we rented for PyCon 2013 to shuttle people into downtown San Francisco, since Santa Clara was so boring. This is really the sort of horrible evangelism that we do. It helps really solidify who we are as a people, both within the community and without. As one PyCon attendee put it, you may code with Django, but you hang out with Plone. The stories can shape our future as well. There's a common term used when talking about open source communities called catbirting, and I've never really liked that term. It's really meant to convey the difficulty of getting a group of dispassionate or unfocused people moving in the same direction. But I really can't think of a single time when standing behind and trying to goad people to move towards a specific destination has ever really worked. I mean, there's always laser pointers. But if you have cats, you know that as soon as you turn off that laser pointer, they will stare at the wall for the next 15 minutes and make you feel guilty. And they'll basically ignore everything else going on around them. There's a quote I read recently about shipbuilding that I thought was really applicable to what we do. And it says, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men and women together wood. Divide the work and give orders. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men and women together wood. Divide the work and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vastness of the sea. And really the best work we've done as a community has come from storytelling, from saying beyond the horizon is the thing, and it's wonderful how you take us there. I tried to find the source for that quote, and the site quote investigator believes it's really a modernization of the statements, and my French pronunciation is horrible, so I'm not going to attempt it and insult everyone. But his book Citadel, and it's not as succinct, but I feel it feels a lot more appropriate. He says, one will weave the canvas, another will fell a tree by the light of his axe, another will forge nails, and there will be others who observe the stars and learn how to navigate. Building a boat isn't about weaving canvas, forging nails, or reaching the sky, or reading the sky. It's about giving a shared taste for the sea, and by the light of which you will see nothing contradictory, but rather a community of love. And I don't think that could describe us better. We had a history of using these stories in our project. Martin Spelly, again, he's typically my go-to scapegoat at these conferences. And since he's not here this year, I'll say nothing but nice things about him. He wrote a blog post called Pete and Andy Try Plone 4. This is back in, what was it, 2010, I believe. No, it was well before that. And basically detailing the first 2 weeks of using Plone for 2 new iterators. And I'd love to read bits of it to you, but it really, the great thing is it sounds like current Plone. It basically was a set of user stories for Plone as a project, and not just code, but also documentation, the installers, the add-ons, and it really touched on features that would later become part of Plone core, things like Diazo, Mosaic, the theme editor, and Mr. Bob. While not everything came true, it was still something we could look at and decide that yes, we are on the right track. This makes sense as a community. This makes sense as a feature. It's really the starting point for my own journey as a core controller. He mentions the theme editor, the theme introspector in here, and I took that and went off and built this project called Glowworm, which was a crazy piece of crap, but it did some stuff that we just weren't doing before. And later turned into a project called Banjo, which later turned into the Diazo theme that we have in core today. Steve McMahon followed that up a few years later with something called Inez Becomes a Plone Developer, where basically following up the same story a few years later. Pete from the previous story is now a manager and doesn't get to code anymore. Andy now works for Mozilla. Not speaking from experience at all. And a new Python developer is brought in to learn the system. And he really uses it to highlight a lot of what Plone has gotten right in the intervening years. But he does also point out some gaps in things like our documentation, the installers, and template generation tools. And he used that as a launching point for a few sprints that we used to fix those issues. And the stories don't have to be told with words either. At the Emerald Sprint in 2014, we had a designer join us, Cal Duvall, and he did a mock-up of a new design for the Adderman product screen, our add-on installation screen. And it really, as soon as everyone there saw it, we knew, we had to have this. It was a vision of, like that. I want that. Like, go build that for me right now. And it's changed a bit in the current implementation, but we have that now in Plone 5. If you remember what it used to look like in older versions, it was horrendous, and it's really moved quite a bit forward. So we've really realized the many of the stories told by prior generations. Martin's blog post talks about things like dexterity, what's now Diazo, recurring events, and Mosaic. These were set forth by the initial Plone generation. They talked about them for years, and we really, now with Plone 5, have integrated the last of them into core and realized their dreams. And so it's really time for us to start writing our own stories. Not necessarily for us, but for the generation that follows. We've started doing that. Eric Rahol has done a lot of talking about the hackability in Plone. That's something we've taken up first. Plone 2020 has been an ongoing discussion of what does Plone look like if we were to move to Python 3, and how do we get there? And we're beginning to write the headless CMS story. And that's something I want to bring Timo up to talk about. I'll just turn it over to him. Oh.
So, hey, as Eric said, I would like to share a story that I hope can help to shape Plone's future, and I want to talk about the Pasanaga UI. Pasanaga is a new user experience framework for Plone, created by Albert Casado, who already created the Plone 5 team, who also worked on the Plone conference website and provided us with all that material. And actually, when Albert came up with that idea that like totally took me by surprise. I was talking to Victor, which is my coworker, and we were always trying to convince Albert to do small things for us. He works full time at HP as user experience developer, but I'm always trying to like get small stuff from him because like, he's doing great work, right? And then we were like, Victor and I were having our daily stand-up, and then Victor would tell me, oh yeah, by the way, do you know Albert is working on a new UI framework for Plone? And I was like, what? I mean, who's paying him for that? Why is he doing that? He was, yeah, you know, he just like started to work on that on his own time, right? And he already created like, I don't know, a few hundred icons for that and like lots of screens, and I was, what? Seriously? And I was so amazed by like just by the fact that he started to work on that, because I mean we're used in the Plone community, we're used to like people like developers starting to work on great stuff, right? I mean, and also like Catalan's work on great stuff, right? As Eric pointed out. So that was nothing new, but the thing that struck me was that this crossed the border, like the boundaries of like our core profession, right? I mean, we're like we're an open community, but most of us are like developers, right? And I think that like open source spirit of like enjoying doing stuff like for free in your free time, right? That this idea spread was really amazing to me to see that like a UX designer can show the same like amount of like passion and involvement and caring about like the product. And also the experience that he gained from the pilot like that. So I was already amazed before I even had a look at Pasanaga UI, and then I like had a look at it, and I was like, it was like great, right? So I will give you like a very short introduction, because Albert will give a talk tomorrow about Pasanaga, and he can explain all the design principles and everything far better than I can do that. So I will just give you like a sneak preview, and please go to his talk, it will be amazing. So I will just briefly cover three like basic design principles. The first design principle is simplicity. I mean that's always something that UX UI designers aim for, right? You make a system approachable and user friendly by like removing stuff and hiding things from users. But we all know that Plone is a really complex beast, right? So that's not no easy task. But the good thing is that that's our main challenge. But the good thing is that Albert had a lot of experience with Plone 5, right? And he just told me this morning that the reason why he started with Pasanaga was that I think I asked him to do like a small task, and he was like trying that with Plone, and he was like, I mean, I guess we all know that at some point you work with something and then you feel, I think we can do better. I mean, it's okay, but I think we can do better, right? And that was like, I guess, the initial starter for him to get started. So we can take like all this experience from his like professional life and from like doing Plone 5, and we all put that into Pasanaga, right? And I think you can see that. So the second main theme or idea is adaptive user interface. At first I used the term mobile first, reflecting the fact that mobile is taking over desktop in recent years. In 2015, Google reported that in like the 10 most important countries, including the US and Japan, mobile searches overtook desktop. In 2016, The Guardian reported that according to Stats Counter, mobile overtook desktop worldwide, right? So more and more people are using mobile devices, tablets, or desktop, right? It's not like 5 or 10 years ago where you had like desktop only, but you have to design your user interface to multiple devices, right? And the idea is really to not go like mobile first, but have adaptive user interface and provide the best user experience for each of the devices that we have. So that if you have a like mobile cell phone, that you provide the best user experience that you can get. And also on a desktop where you have more space, right? I mean, that's a major challenge, but I think Albert is up to that. The third thing is focus on particular like important user interfaces, and think about like our most like important use cases and also users. And that was an idea that was like something that like resonates with me immediately, because I had a kind of an eye-opening experience about 1 year ago. I was writing a blog post for my company, and I did what I usually do. I wrote like plain text in my development editor, and then I copied it over to our blog post, right? And I was like, wait, what the hell am I doing here? The blog software that I was using was actually providing like a great user interface. It really like was a reduced user interface that made it really easy and fun to write stuff online, right? And then when I was like doing my usual stuff, it occurred to me that no, wait, I'm using like a system right now that makes it fun to like write stuff online, right? And then I thought about like, what the hell? I'm a Plone developer since 10 years, right? I'm building like a CMS. And my workflow is like exactly the opposite of what we expect users to do, right? We expect our users to use TinyMCE. And then I thought about like why I was drawn to Plone, right, in the first place. And it was like 10 years ago when I started with Plone, that Plone provided like a really great user interface and a great user experience. Plone was one of the first systems that had like a what you see is what you get editor, right? I mean, that was really like made Plone stand out like 10 or 15 years ago, because other systems did not have that. Today we are using TinyMCE. That's the thing it's a decent editor, right? We're all working with that, that's fine. But every other system is using something similar, right? Most CMSs use TinyMCE these days or something similar, but Plone is not in that particular part, it's not outstanding any longer. It's just providing the same user experience that all the other systems do, right? So and what we're aiming for with Pasanaga UI is to make Plone's UX stand out again, to provide really a great user experience, because we think that like our editors are our most important like user group, right? That's for many users, that's at least my experience in the last like 10 years of my professional life. For most users, like Plone is like TinyMCE, right? I mean, that's where they spend like most of the time in that editor, right? And we sincerely believe that we have to that we have to focus on that part, and that we have to provide like a better user experience for those kind of users, right? So the question is, how do we make that happen? I mean, Albert really created, I mean, you will see that in his talk if you go there, he created really tons of materials already. And as Eric pointed out, we need to like tell stories to like make people do something, right? We're not like a company, right, where you can just assign people and say, hey, you are going to do that and you're going to do that, right? That's not going to work, because Plone, the software or the community runs on passion, right? The passion that we have for our product, and we're doing that in our free time, and we're enjoying that a lot, right? And so that works differently. And the cool thing about like Pasanaga is that Albert did not only provide us with a UI and with mocks, but he also provided us with an idea. Pasanaga means carrot in Catalan, as you can tell from the image. And he told me when he actually showed me the Pasanaga UI and he told me about like his idea. He told me that his idea is to have a carrot on a stick, right? To drag people to use Plone, right? To use that Pasanaga UI, to drag them to Plone. And that was an idea that resonated with me immediately, and then started me to think, especially since I like started to work on another idea about like 3 years ago. That's kind of like the second story I would like to tell. Like 3 or 4 years ago, I started with building a RESTful API for Plone, because we started to use at our company more modern JavaScript front ends, and we needed like an API for that, right? And in Sorrento, initially, I started to like draft a solution with Simone back then, and we created a draft, an idea, and we created like a POC, right, to see if that works with Plone and like to do an initial implementation. And then I think even in Sorrento or right after it, Ramon jumped in and we discussed about like REST API principles and how we can make that work with the Z publisher, because the Z publisher is really old code. And so Ramon like jumped in and like struggled with the Z publisher really hard, and I was just like sitting next to him and like okay, that guy's like incredibly smart, and I don't have like any idea what he's doing, but I will say yeah, sure all the time. And that was my contribution, I guess to Plone REST. I wrote a few tests. I can do that. So apart from that, like Ramon did all the stuff, and I guess that was also the point when you started to think about Guillotina, right? Which Nathan will talk about later today. But that was not it. We created Plone REST, and then we recreated Plone REST API, which provides like the entire API. But as I said, I just created like a proof of concept, right, to get things going. And because of my like changes in my personal life in the last 2 years, because I became father 2 years ago, was that I did not have that much time, right, to work on stuff. So I couldn't like push that as hard as I would have liked to. But then like Thomas and Lucas from Teamworks came in, and they wanted to use Plone REST API for their OpenGator platform that they provide to their clients. They came to me and said, hey, what about like adding archetypes to archetype support? Because and I was like, we like wrote down our like design principles and like goals and ideas, and it said like there are no archetypes, right? We don't want to support that. We don't want to switch and stuff, right? It's the old thing we're doing dexterity. But I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, why not? If you do the work, I can live with that, right? And they did not only like provide like the entire archetype support, but also like rewrote my like crappy initial POC code and like added adapters and stuff that gives Plone like the flexibility, Plone REST API the flexibility today to like adapt to different needs, right? Which is really great, right? That was something that I didn't assume initially, but it just happens, right? Those are the things that happen in the Plone community. People, you provide them with an initial idea, and then people jump in and do like great things, right? And then when we had Plone REST API, I think around the Beethoven sprint, people started to build stuff on top of Plone REST API. Initially, I created an Angular 2 POC on top of Plone REST API, which also really sucked. But then Eric came along, right? Eric Roll, and he started to write an Angular 2 SDK, which he gave a training yesterday, which he will give a talk about at the conference as well. And he created really like an awesome SDK, and what I could heard from the trainers, it's from the training participants. It works really well for them, right? So that's awesome. At the same time, Rob Hittema and Roll Brügging started to work on a React implementation on top of Plone REST API, and I was like similarly amazed because they basically built that thing in like a week or two, and we are working on an internal project with Angular 2 for like a year or so. So I know how much work we have to put into like building that functionality, and what they did within like 2 weeks was just like so amazing. Yeah, that was also something that like I haven't like anticipated before, right? I mean, we just like told the story, we set like the basic ideas, and then just people like did amazing things. So that's where the like two ideas come together. So on one hand, we worked on like a technical basis to allow us to use modern JavaScript performance. Because if we have a new UI, right, most likely we do not want to use like old technology. And at the same time, it will last like 3 to 4 years. I will go more in depth during my talk tomorrow about that. But things have like changed in web development, right? We see those emerging JavaScript frameworks that are everywhere, and there are like amazing projects out there that you can like just take, right? And from a painful experience, I guess, in the last years in the Plone community, we saw that it's really hard to maintain stuff on our own, right? And I sincerely believe that we have to start to reuse over reinventing stuff, right? We have to become consumers of libraries that are out there. And the JavaScript build, I think, gives us that opportunity. So we have like two stories basically that come together. We have the technology and the libraries that we need to actually implement like a really good user experience, and we have like the draft for the Pasanaga UI, right? That allows us to create something. One wouldn't work without the other, right? If we would have just like the marks and not the right technology to do it, that would like not work, and the other way around either. So to sum things up, we have like the Pasanaga UI from Aldo that allows us to drag people into the direction, both people from the outside to drag them to Plone, and I think people from inside the community And the thing that we want to, what we're aiming for is really to, or what our vision is to make Plone stand out in the CFS market again. That if people start to use Plone, they're amazed by what it can provide, right? And this pasanaga that allows us to drag people allows us to do a few things that we had in mind, like anyways, right? One thing is that we want to modernize our front end and have this like reuse over reinvent idea, right? Second thing is like modernize our backend, which has been around and which Eric already mentioned with Python 3 and so 4, right? If we would like release a new clone version with just like Python 3 and so 4, it might be hard to convince like clients to like pay a lot of money for us to like upgrade to that system, right? If we don't provide them with like more value to them. I mean, it's not, I mean, for us, we're developers. So it's cool, you can tell the developer, hey, it's cool if you can upgrade to Python 3, right? And you say, hey, wow, that's great, that's awesome, right? Zone 4, I mean, perfect, great, but for clients it might be a bit harder, right? So we need that pasanaga for our clients and add additional value to that because they don't immediately see the value maybe on like upgrading 2 to 3, right? For them it's not, it's just like a number, right? Yeah, I think that with all of those different like approaches in the Plone community and all those stories that we tell each other, there's a bright future for future Plone versions, and we have like all the knowledge in our community that we need to like work together on making Plone like outstanding again.
That's not even close to correct. Thanks, Steele. So to wrap it up, I basically just wanted to challenge you all this week to share the story of Plone, both past and future. If you're here as someone new, find the people that look just like they have that distant stare from looking too far into the Zope code to debug problems in their sites, and ask them, ask them for some good stories, because I'm sure they have them. A few beers probably wouldn't hurt. And I'd like to challenge you all, especially the core developers, to start writing the story of Plone's future. We have an opportunity to really map out where we go from here. Like I said before, we've realized the dreams of the previous generation, and it's time to start communicating our own.